go on to things to do in Belfast, shall we?
Good idea. Have a drink.
Yeah, the Titanic experience at Belfast Docks is one of the best things to do. It's also the last remaining White Line ship SS Normandic. It was one of Titanic's tenders, so it's also available for the tourists to have a look at and have a look in. But the Titanic experience was
I enjoyed it.
It's quite amazing.
It is very amazing, and some of the artefacts they've managed to collect from the ship and put in there, and then they tell the story of how they built it, and then some of the people involved, and some of the people that were actually rescued. It tells their story.
Yeah.
So we were there for a good few hours. Enjoyed it. Thoroughly worth doing.
Yeah, it's really good. The Belfast private black cab tour is extremely interesting. You see the Belfast murals, the Shankill and Falls Road, and tell the stories of the Troubles. Probably one of the most famous murals and one that we know is that of hunger striker Bobby Sands. As well as these more recent murals, there is the William of Orange mural and the Battle of the Boyne. But your taxi driver is pretty much your guide for that, and they're usually people that have lived through those troubles, so they know all about it. Whether you get a Catholic one or a Protestant one, well, you'll sort that. No, you will know when you're on the tour, because you'll know what things they favour, what things they talk about, so you can get that.
Another one well worth doing. Our guy was brilliant, and I remember he told us a story about a fish and chip shop that his wife and daughter used to go to a lot, and
yes.
Some of the stories around that were incredible. You're going to tell me about that later?
Yes, we are going to talk about that later.
Right.
Also on the tour, you go to Crumlin Road Jail, which is a Victorian-era prison which only closed in 1996. You can take a guided tour to hear the stories of the prisoners. There is a tunnel underneath the road, or there still was a tunnel. Well, there's always been one. A tunnel under the road which connects the jail and the courthouse, so they could take prisoners backwards and forwards without having to worry about anybody throwing bombs or trying to shoot the prisoners or anything, or the police, as they took them back across. But it also the tour takes you to the graveyard, because there were, in the old days when they used to sentence someone to death, they said that they were never to be buried on sacred land or consecrated land. So they would bury them in the back of the prison. So there's a few prisoners there too. For those Games of Thrones aficionados, there is a tour for you as well, because that brought lots of tourists to Belfast. Yes, okay. Continue on.
You know I'm not a fan.
No, I know. Take the hop-on, hop-off bus tour for orientation of Belfast City, because it's, it gives you an idea of how the city's laid out, where you want to go, what you want to see. But for a truly immersive experience with people that have lived through the Troubles, take the black taxi tours. Belfast Castle.
Hang on, just before you go on. The hop-on, hop-off bus tours we recommend every time. Yeah. That's the first thing we do when we hit a city we haven't done before, is jump on the hop-on, hop-off, because as Karen said, it helps you get the lay of the land, and it gives you an idea about where you want to go back to as well. So Always do that the first time we hit.
And even though we talk about them all the time, we don't get a retainer or anything from them.
No, I wish.
They wouldn't even know we're talking about them.
No, exactly.
But other places that should be on your list are Belfast Castle, the Botanic Gardens and St Anne's Cathedral, the Queen's University. They're must-do places. The Stormont, the Parliament at Stormont is also perhaps of interest to some people. So if you want to do that, head up the hill to Stormont. It's also time now to talk about our trip to Belfast, what we did, what we saw, and what we thought about this city. So, do you want to say anything? Oh, I shall carry on.
No, you carry on. I'll shut up for a change.
And you'll talk when
I'll just butt in when I deem necessary.
So this was my second visit to Belfast, but the first visit for my travelling companions. So that included Ty, of course.
Unlike later editions of tours where she's left me at home.
My sister, Mrs. D, was especially interested in this city as her late husband grew up in Belfast. Miss M was also with us. So there were four of us on the trip. We spent the morning at the Titanic exhibition at the dockyards, and everyone knows so much about the sinking of the ship and stories of survivors and sad stories of those lost. It's still a sad, fascinating exhibition. And we found it, as Ty said, to be extremely well put together and surprisingly it's interesting, given I've read so much about the Titanic over the years. It's not something you go, oh, that's boring because I already know that. They have these, I don't know, what do you call them? Holograms.
Yes.
Of people.
Hologram type movies, yeah.
Yeah, so they have these holograms and you walk past something and all of a sudden a hologram of a person that was on the ship pops up and they tell their story. And
Yep.
so it's really fascinating.
I'd give that exhibition a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
That's a must-do definite.
It's very good. After the exhibition, we still had time to visit the city centre and a couple of shops, of course, before meeting
Oh, surprise, surprise.
before meeting two very special Belfast, or they live outside of Belfast now, residents who would be our guides for the afternoon. So we met my sisters-in-law, Billy and Rita, for the first time over lunch. After a lovely lunch, they took us on a short stroll through the magnificent building and grounds of the Queen's University to the museum and then to the botanical gardens. So it was a really nice, unrushed afternoon of
Aren't
sightseeing,
they a
wasn't it?
beautiful couple?
Yep, it was very good, and it's good to have locals to tell you their experiences.
And they were so refined. They really were.
This lady was a model before she married, or maybe a model part through her life. So she still had
Very elegant.
very elegantly dressed, yes, hair beautifully done, the whole bit, in her 70s. So, yeah, it was very good. But we had booked a black taxi tour for the next day because I chose this over, we did the hop-on, hop-off bus, but the black taxi would stop and let us get out to take pictures at our leisure. It also was a little bit more personal. And he was also our guide, telling us lots of facts and stories of the Troubles. The driver that came to pick us up, sadly, was a smoker. Not just the faint smell of cigarette smoke under the aftershave type smoker, but a fully fledged chain smoker, which meant...
The cab smelled like an ashtray.
Yeah, so that was one of the difficulties, but still we could see past that. This meant lots of photo opportunities for us, but an uncomfortable tour in a smelly taxi. Rust was also prevalent in the doors and the side panels of the cab. But you know what? That's all about the experience,
Well,
isn't
it was
really?
actually, it did have the rust holes because that provided further air into the cab.
All that aside, the tour was well worth it, and the drivers took us to areas the hop-on, hop-off bus couldn't. We visited the Falls Road area first and viewed the murals and a couple of monuments to those killed in the conflict through the 1960s and 70s. Now, the Falls Road is the Catholic area. So before we go on to a bit more...